Hello and welcome to the 30th episode of the Gochuucast. And today we have a topic that we have had on the back burner for a while. Didn't know if we wanted to do it or not. We decided, fuck it, why not? Just gonna be the sub versus dub debate. Yeah, I mean it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know.
I was excited about it because I was thinking about it for a while. So that's why I wanted to do it today. But
Yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess my simple thoughts are, I have nothing against a dub, but I do think the majority of them are dog shit.
I
But
think I'm somewhere similar there too, where there are definitely dubs that are good and dubs that I will watch and listen to. And then there are also dubs that I would never touch for the 10-foot pole.
Yeah. No, when I started, I think the first few anime I saw were subbed. And then there were some that I heard that had good dubs, but I knew from like previous people, like people talking about anime, they're like, "Oh yeah, all dubs suck," and which I guess in fairness, like a lot of them do. And so I was watching all of them in subs, so I was like, I didn't really care for dubs or anything. And then actually, my favorite anime, Steins Gate, I watched that dubbed, and I legit like I will like stand by this. And I watched it subbed like later on, for me personally, I preferred the dub version. Why? I think first of all, it was like actually done well, like because like a lot of dubs are like because like I've tried ones in the future or like ones after that were like really really bad, and like I totally get it. Like I wouldn't watch it. Like after 10 minutes, I was done with that. But like I thought that dub was like done really well, and I think like a lot of the jokes and like it just felt like uh like kind of like an American like sci-fi TV show. Like it didn't feel like I was watching something in a different language. Like sometimes you could feel that stuff is like translated, but like that one I felt was like really good. I know a lot of people like the voices in the sub, the voice acting in the sub, which I guess we'll talk about later. And I agree, it is very good. But I would say like my overall enjoyment was just higher with the dub for whatever reason. Well, I explained my reasoning, but yeah. So I guess I'm like quote unquote biased in that sense, in that I think there are good dubs that exist, and I think for some people, they might enjoy it, so it might be worth a shot. But I understand the sentiment because a lot of them are just not very good. So
I have heard that the Steins Gate dub is like among the better. I've never listened to it because
yeah,
I've already watched it in sub, and I
yeah,
don't care to go back and watch it in English.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I mean, yeah, I've never heard it before, but obviously the sub has some good voice acting in it as well. Like main
yeah.
character, it's got Kana Hanazawa. Can never go wrong with her. It's got a fine cast.
Mhm.
Um, and so there's no reason to like try it again, but in dub. But it is something that like I have heard that the dub is
Yeah.
not bad.
I think another thing that the dub does well, um, I think a lot of times when jokes get translated or like situational humor, I guess, gets translated, they don't do a very good job of it, or it just sounds really awkward because they try to make it like too modern or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I think the way it was done like completely works, like for pretty much every single like joke or like funny moment, like actually like legitimately works there.
A
And I
lot
think the
of jokes
character,
are
yeah,
localized too. Like
yeah, exactly.
there's a few random comedy animes that I've tried to watch,
Yep.
even like just subs of, and sometimes the jokes still don't get through. And so
Yeah, yeah,
for dubs, I
exactly.
feel like it's even worse sometimes.
Yeah, and the dubs can like exacerbate that, I think sometimes. So I thought that they did well, and I think like the way the characters talk, it's like so like one of the things we talked about with like the voice acting thing was like they all in Japan, at least from what I'm understanding, maybe you guys can correct me, but I think it's correct. It's like all the characters or like all the voice actors, like they record kind of together,
yeah.
so you can play off each other.
If Q the anime is any semblance of what actual voice recording sessions are like, they are all together in like a room or whatever, and
Exactly.
they like step up to
And
the mic.
yeah, and that doesn't happen normally for dubs. But from what I've heard, Steins Gate, they actually did that. Like they had everyone there, which I mean, ideally should be the baseline or whatever. That should be the standard. but it isn't. And I think that definitely contributes to it because it feels like the characters, like when they talk to each other, it's like natural. It feels like very natural. It doesn't feel like it was like recorded, you know?
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't
I
be
think that was like,
surprised if a lot of dubs were like, "All right, send us the audio file. We'll tune it up a little bit."
yeah, or they just like have people record stuff separately, which doesn't work a lot of times because of conversations and because like in a normal conversation between two humans, you play off each other depending on how one person's tone is, you respond differently, etc. So it's just naturally not going to be as fluid. But I
Yeah.
think they did that correctly. So
Sometimes, like like with dubs, so anime mouth flaps, the Japanese obviously don't give a shit, which is fine. You don't always need to sync them; it'll just work most of the time, probably if you just move them shits up and down. But for whatever reason, dubs try and make the mouth flaps like work with what they're saying. Maybe this is more of a problem when I hear it in maybe it'd be more of a problem in English because I actually understand, you know, the majority. Obviously, I understand English versus like the vast majority of Japanese, and so maybe the mouth flaps in Japanese don't mean anything to me because my brain can't comprehend that anyway. But they'll try and match up to like the mouth flaps, I'm pretty sure. So they'll like change around dialogue to try and fit that. And so sometimes that can have an effect on like the writing per se. Because I do think it's not always the voice acting. I will say there's very like select pool of voice actors for dub. I think we've talked about it before. The dub industry is not a very kind place to be. It does not pay jack fucking shit for anime, and so it's definitely more of a passion thing, and so you're not gonna have as many people doing it, and because of that, you don't have as wide of an array of talent, and there are also many productions that don't really care as long as they can get like a voice,
something out.
Yes.
Yeah, like they'll contact people who have like no voice acting experience, but they have a following or whatever. They're all right. Can you voice in our thing? And then you also have things like all right, I don't give a shit about the Mario movie. Honest to God, I don't care. I think that casting is hilarious. But there are a lot of people who are like, oh my God, Chris Pratt just sounds like Chris Pratt. I'm like, you have no idea how many voice actors do not give a shit when it comes to that. I feel like because you'll, especially like in anime, doesn't matter if it's sub or dub. There are people who go in there. They're like, all right. Today, I'm just going to use my voice that I've always used for the past like 20 years. There are all sorts of recognizable voices. And sometimes they'll change it up a little bit. But like Kenjiro Suda or whatever, for example, is a very recognizable voice actor. And he is the same guy every single time, basically. But he's very talented, and his voice is very cool, and so it doesn't matter. So honestly, I don't give a shit. Chris Pratt is a terrible casting for an Italian plumber, but
yes,
I don't
know why it's Chris Pratt.
I don't particularly give a shit. I don't know. I don't remember most of the castings for that. I know they had Jack Black as Bowser. I think that's probably a great casting, but I don't know.
That works.
I'm not like, I don't know if I played a Mario game since like Mario Odyssey, the first one specifically.
Isn't it? So they released the Japanese dub voice actors for the Mario movie also recently. I'm pretty sure it was like a pretty funny cast.
I remember seeing some of them, but I don't remember.
Yeah, there was like one in particular that they said like the anime characters the person had done, and they were like, oh, and they're also voicing Mario or something like that.
Yeah, he's the guy from Death Note, the main character, Mamoru Miyano. Yeah,
oh,
I think he's pretty famous. Yeah.
The voice actor who plays Gilgamesh in Fate Zero is the voice actor for Toad. That was the one that I specifically was DM'd about from Lugia.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, you'll find that throughout whatever they'll. I think I can't remember which fucking episode I mentioned it in, but it probably the voice acting one, that would make sense. But like the voice actor for Eren and Attack on Titan going from this like absolutely brutal fucking series to fucking Takagi, and he's worried about not getting teased. So it's like there are all sorts of voices that
it happens all the time.
There's quite
contextualized with like, I guess things that are more familiar to us, is the way I guess I would describe it.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Now I'm wondering. I guess it's kind of hard because we're like not kids anymore, but like if you think about it, like some of the old like movies or shows that we've seen as a kid that are like, Western media or whatever, like, Pixar movies or Nickelodeon shows or whatever, like we never view those shows with as much scrutiny in terms of voice acting, right? I don't think. I mean, right? Like
Sure.
SpongeBob. Like nobody like nobody like analyzes the voice acting of SpongeBob. And I get why, because it's like a big thing in Japan. The voice actors are more famous, etc. I totally get that. But I'm just wondering like how much of it is just due to like the garbage or not garbage, but like the what's gonna happen when things get translated and then they have to be like redubbed. Like maybe just all dubs are just like kind of inherently flawed. Like the process of dubbing is just almost always gonna result in like a worse product because of the translation and
I mean, it's not what it was meant to be. It is not the base
yeah, exactly.
product.
So like, I don't think anybody would complain about like SpongeBob's voice acting because it's like, okay, there's a little bit of nostalgia involved, but like, it just kind of works, right? Or at least in our minds, it kind of works. But maybe Japanese people, despite how good the voice actors there might be, a Japanese dub of SpongeBob, which I've never seen, I have no idea even if it exists. Maybe it does.
It does.
Yeah, maybe it's just not as good. Maybe they think it sounds a little bit weird. You know what I mean? So like, even if their voice actors are more talented, it's just like they're inherently working with like an inherently flawed product, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could never watch a like a dub like if it was originally English and it got dubbed to something else.
Yeah.
That's just not gonna.
Yeah.
I think the weirdest shit is when they dub like I know like Squid Game or whatever when that was popular. There are people who would watch like English dub, but it's real people. You can't like. It's not even like there's not mouth flaps that are actual moving mouths.
Yeah.
I would
Like,
never in my life just watch the fucking subtitles. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
Like I don't. There are definitely times where it's like, all right, buckle up, you get on your reading glasses, and just suck it up and watch what it was meant to be.
Reading is so hard, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if people have bad eyesight or whatever, they can't tell what the fuck is going on anyway. Then yeah, sure, go watch the dub. But like, if you can read on your television screen the subtitles, congratulations, you should turn them on, and you don't have to watch a obviously like inferior thing.
I mean, I'm one of those people that half the time, even if I'm watching a show in English, I put subtitles on, unless the subtitles do not match what they're saying.
I will say, I can agree with like. There are so many times where like I used to watch The Walking Dead. I haven't watched the latest 2 seasons or whatever, but especially as I got to like the later seasons, the sound mixing is so fucking dog shit. Everyone's just whispering all the time, and I cannot hear jack shit.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I wish I had subtitles because everyone is quiet. My TV is on like typically I have that shit on like 8, but for like The Walking Dead, I have to crank it up to 30 to like maybe hear them. It's just. Definitely like a helpful thing to just have the words there, and that way you don't mishear anything, because your brain is gonna like you'll tune them out, like you don't have to because you're hearing the words, right? And so your brain's gonna tune out the subtitles, but you're gonna like ingrain in your mind what actually is being said.
Yeah, I do the same thing with British shows. They're like it's just hard to understand sometimes.
British shows.
No, dude, the accent, it's like it's cool, but it's hard to understand sometimes. So I usually put this up.
Yeah,
nothing against the British, of course.
You need a British sub where it like replaces their shitty slang with the actual word.
Yeah.
Dude, when Jeff told
we watched Encouragement to Climb, and that felt like
my god! Every time I saw mum like with the MUM, I like my soul crumbled a little bit.
Oh no!
Just because. There's nothing. Obviously, it's it's a different country, different culture. I don't care. It's mom, MOM, just like it's soccer, and not football, that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, outside of my blatant hate for the way I will say adding a U to things is cool, but not like
color.
I mean, like when you're like color or armor, adding the U in there, I think it looks cooler. But when it's like replacing. Like you got mum, and then, dude, when Jeff said Hoover, for the word vacuum. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I forgot
that's-
about insane mover. No, you're right. I totally forgot.
I'm like,
about
that is not real. No one uses that. No one. I'm a guarantee people do use it, but they shouldn't use it.
No one should use it. Yep.
Just it's like proving that every stereotype has like a hint of truth in there. Well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of them do.
Racism work?
Racism, yeah. British racism has a lot of. There's a lot of snippets of truth in there.
Maybe. But yeah, I only brought up that point about like, Western media and like how we view voice actors, because it's like, I just feel like that's just like, there's always just gonna be more scrutiny, and like if you're looking at animated
I think
stuff,
it is definitely different here, because like, I don't know if I could tell you many voice actors.
No, I couldn't either.
In general, for
But,
literally anything, even if they're good.
But would you tell me like the SpongeBob voice actors did a good job? Like you didn't feel like they like did something bad, right? Like you didn't think they were like inadequate in any way.
I mean, I couldn't have told you as a child. Well, because I'm a child watching fucking SpongeBob.
Right. No, but like even nowadays, like
I will say, I would never be able to listen to a not Tom Kenny's SpongeBob, but that's just because it's like
exactly, it's iconic.
Yeah, though there are times where like in SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, they got the entire cast except for two characters, and that was Mermaid
Mr.
Man
Krabs?
and Mr. Krabs. And
I
gotta say, they are
I could tell.
both fucking awful. They should have shot the voice actors on site for what they did to those characters.
I didn't say that.
No. I'm saying that it was absolutely a travesty what they did to those characters.
I remember playing that game when I was like 8 or 9, and I was like, what the heck? Why do they sound different? I was like, that is not how Mermaid Man sounded in the anime. Or not, anime, the show.
Yeah, I just, some of the best parts of the game is the dialogue, but I skip over Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man every single time.
Yeah, they sound a little bit weird. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I think it's a little bit clouded by the fact that it's like a translation, which there obviously could be steps taken to fix that. I think another one that I watched dubbed was another one of my anime that I really liked was Code Geass. I watched the entire thing dubbed. I did watch some of it subbed later on, but I thought the voice actors there were like pretty good overall. And I don't know about whether they recorded together or whatever, but I thought it was good. And then finally Death Note. That's another one I watched dubbed, and I thought it was good. I think my stance on it is like, I think if someone wants to watch it dubbed and feels like the dub version is better, it's like, I feel like there's a sentiment that they're like, I don't know. I feel like anime should be consumed in the way, like any media should be consumed in the way you like it. So that's like my stance on it. Now, if you're gonna argue that like switching to sub would like improve your viewing experience, I totally get that, and I think it's worth a try. And chances are they probably will like it better, maybe. But I think like the whole like thing about dubs is like, if it gets people to watch it, then I'm like cool with that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, but here's the counterpoint. In
Okay,
this family,
counterpoint.
we are all toxic, and I like being toxic.
Oh my
and telling
god!
people
I was
their
expecting
dog
an actual counterpoint.
No. I'm not actually counterpointing, because I actually do agree with this sentiment for the most part, where it's, if you like dubs and that's what you want to watch, that's fine. I am someone who has watched a lot of dubs, especially like when I started watching anime, I watched a lot of dubs. And there are still shows that if I know the dub's good, I will go watch it now. I watched Yu Yu Hakusho like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, after like, having watched subs and dubs for a long time, and it was just, oh, this is the dub to Yu Yu Hakusho is good. Let me try it in dub. So it roughly the same sentiment for me, but I do think that there's just not a lot of dubs that I feel like have really high production quality.
Yeah, I agree.
And that, which we've already mentioned, but that's probably the biggest thing to me, is like, it's fair, but also I do think that there is a good argument for quality difference.
No, I agree. I tried, like I mentioned, like after I saw, well, I mean, I guess those 3 were not like in succession or anything. I just watched them, but like scattered in between, I tried some shows with dubs. I watched the first season of Mobile Suit Gundam 00 in dubbed, and like while it wasn't the most awful. It definitely was a step below the others, and I was like, damn, I would kind of wish I'd watched it in sub because feel like I would have enjoyed it more. But I just had the dub version going on Hulu or whatever, so I just didn't bother to change anything because I didn't think it was like awful, but I think I agree that like it could have been. I think that my enjoyment could have been higher if had I watched it in sub.
I think
And
really
then
bad
there were others
dubs.
that I just like hated. So yeah.
I think really bad dubs are also really obvious to us as English
Yep.
speakers because
Oh yeah, exactly.
there are definitely times when I watch bad dubs where they've had line deliveries that like confused me because I'm like, well, that's not
Yep.
how like someone would talk.
Yep.
They were English, and I think that's one of the other issues too. Is I
Yeah.
actually think that there's a lot of like very passable dubs, but the like little things they don't do to us
Exactly.
feel so huge.
Yeah. There's so many like intricacies of language that it's hard to grasp. Yeah, go ahead.
Spat, you said you started with sub, which was not the case for me. I started,
Yeah.
I guess Pokemon was technically my first, but then like Dragon Ball Z is like the one I would say is like the first proper anime. And I've watched that in dub. Now I will say I watched Kai, not the original Dragon Ball Z. The nostalgia factor probably clouds a lot of minds, but before Kai, or at least like the earlier bits of Z, like through like Frieza Saga, probably, it was very bad dub. It was dog shit even. But I will say Dragon Ball Z Kai, where they updated the animation to be like HD and stuff, and they revoice acted it. The current like cast of Dragon Ball is very good at what they do. Now Dragon Ball is a very different franchise in comparison to your random seasonal anime, and so obviously they have the money to give people incentive to not be ass. So you'll have like Sean Schimmel or whatever screaming in a voice recording booth and passing out from how hard he's going as Goku. It is like one of the few dubs I'd say I prefer over the sub. I have nothing against the Dragon Ball voice actors and JP. It's just that Grandma Goku is not testosterone filled Goku, and it does not scratch the monkey urge that Dragon Ball it does. And so I did watch I watched Dragon Ball Super in sub because I wasn't gonna fucking wait for the dub because dubs tend to lag behind. You don't get simulcast that often. Simulcast is like you'll get shit for that like for the big shonens that aren't as long running. Like you'll get like My Hero simulcast, and even then that stuff is like still going to be behind a little bit, probably by like a week or two. So yeah, it's just my journey continued. I think I might have actually talked about this in the voice acting one, but I'm pretty sure I did. At least some episode where I mentioned my switch to sub was guided by two things. It was Fairy Tail ran out of dub content, and so I switched to the sub because it was much farther ahead. And then High School DxD changed their main character voice actor. Because Mars pointed out that I had left out some context between what happened to the original voice actor of Issei from High School DxD. I'm not going to get into that, but he did some very naughty things that landed him on a very naughty list. And so yeah, he was no longer the voice actor, and the new one they got was like drastically different. And so I'm like, all right, fuck this. I'm not doing this. Maybe the Japanese sounds closer, and it did. And so I stuck with that, and I haven't really looked back since.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just I don't. Maybe I'm like more biased against dubs because I've just stuck with sub for so long since then. But it's also a matter of I think there is obviously an objective quality difference just because of how different the idolization of voice acting is in Japan versus like the United States. So while there are good dubs, I do think that like objectively, like you can enjoy a dub. Anyone can enjoy anything that they want, but there's always like a level of objectivity to like pretty much anything. Well, not anything, but like for the most part, there's going to be some level of objectivity that goes outside of like enjoyment. Like, is a show good? Let's take Ghost Stories for example.
Oh, no.
Since we're talking about dubs, we'll talk about probably
Oh.
the most infamous dub of all time.
Don't-
Objectively,
Don't say
Ghost Stories, fucking dog shit. But
Yep.
God, is that dub a gem amongst? It's so like
Funny.
it's fucking funny because it's unhinged, and you don't see that ever from pretty much anything. And you definitely wouldn't see it today. Those voice actors, if they did what they did in that dub today, done.
But it would have
Career
canceled them.
over.
It would have gone crazy.
Career done.
Career would have been I'm surprised people haven't gone back to cancel them. It's just
I know why they haven't gone back. It's too funny.
it's too funny. You can't shit on something that beloved
Great.
as it's so you'll never see a more like united front on this dub was so much better than the sub. And it's not because it did anything for the story. It turned a serious anime into a comedy. And
Yep.
it just works like that sometimes, I guess.
And it became the greatest dub of our generation.
Dude,
It-
that's so
It was
funny.
quite something. I mean, it also
Really?
tells you the state. I mean, I guess like it was very special production type of thing because it got canceled, and so they're like, all right, fuck it, make money somehow, please. You can do whatever you want as long as you keep it kind of the similar. And I mean, I don't know if it worked, but it became infamous at the very least.
Yeah, fair. I think another thing that I was gonna say is that like it's hard for me as a not Japanese speaker to like my understanding of like how good sub voice acting is based on like emotion, I guess, or like emotion and the tone. But in terms of like the actual dialogue, I'm just going off of the fact that people say the Japanese voice actors are good because like I don't experience a Japanese conversation in day-to-day life, right? Ever. Like I don't understand Japanese, right? So I'm just wondering whether my opinion of subs is like it's basically based off like reputation, right? Like I don't know. It's just kind of hard for me to evaluate as a someone who doesn't speak the language to like evaluate how good voice acting is.
Like,
Which
are
I guess
you
we talked
being
about.
gaslit by the community
Yeah.
into thinking
Am I
that?
being gaslit? Probably not. But like, it's also hard for me to like if voice acting is like a 10 out of 10 versus like an 8 out of 10. Like, I legitimately think like if it was in Japanese, I couldn't tell the difference. Both are good, but like, I don't know enough about that language or understand it to be able to tell the small differences like that, which doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But like, yeah, I'm not gonna say gaslit, but you know, there's some level of like, I have to kind of trust that people say it's good. If I enjoy it, I enjoy it. It doesn't matter. But yeah, that's just like kind of one thought I had with like how people perceive sub versus dub that could like cloud people's judgment or like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I do
That's
think
my
I
opinion.
enjoyed dubs more before it was like brought to my attention that there was a quality.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
that's what
kind
I'm
of a
thinking.
funny thing to say, but like honestly, right? Like
It's like
there.
it's like never knowing that you needed something
Yeah.
until you got it.
Yeah. Like, I guess I would be able to tell that, like, I think if you showed people, like, dubbed without showing them sub, I think they could tell that the voice acting was not that good because they understand English, right? So, like, if your evaluation of, like, how good voice acting is like, to some level dependent on you understanding the language and understanding the nuance of the language, like how conversations are supposed to go, how people respond to certain, like, things, right? Then how can people really evaluate Japanese voice acting other than kind of trusting it's good? I don't know.
I
That's
think-
just like a thought that I've
I
had.
think there are certain things that you can hear.
Sure, there's certain things.
in my
You can't do
opinion,
everything, and I
There's
feel like a lot of
like,
it
yeah.
is blocked.
There's like a human element to it. Like you'll see, like so let's say like sports analysis, for example. Like when you're evaluating a player and their skill,
Yeah.
you can obviously like you'll hear like the word like he's got the clutch factor. That's not like a literal thing you can see, but you
It's
can
a
like
meme.
it's kind of like a he's you can tell who's that guy and who's not. Kind of just like with the eye test
Ooh,
kind of
can
thing.
you though? Can you though?
You can
I mean,
tell
kind of.
you can definitely tell like through like the subtleties of like, maybe like a player or are they that guy or not? Are they a leader? do they have the it factor? You know, one of the buzzwords that people will throw around. Basically, are they him? You never know.
Do they got that dog in them?
Yeah,
this is what
got that dog in them?
Yeah. No, okay, I can agree that like that factor, like I think you can kind of see it, or I can see how someone can see it. Like, okay, Tom Brady, like, okay, he's led all these comebacks, and everybody knows that, right? And we know that you can call him like a clutch player, right? But like, also when it comes to evaluating like sports players, like an example, like I don't think the average person does a good job of that either. Like, I feel like there's so many people that people think are like bad because of like narratives and stuff like that. I'm gonna refrain from using the word gaslit,
Okay.
but like a little bit.
A counter argument here as a big sports fan, all right? Because I don't think you're totally wrong here, but I'm going to counterpoint real quick. How many of
Okay.
those people actually watch film?
No, a lot of people I think actively watch and they still, because it's not their fault. I'm not saying it's their fault, but like, who's going to be a better evaluation of talent? Like, now I'm going like more in detail of like how.
Because then there's also the difference between like talent. Because like I think talent.
No, I know. Like how good.
Really
Okay, I'm not even going to talk about talent. Like how good a player is. How good a player is. Like I think the average person is just not going to see things that like a professional or like someone who's dedicated their life to it would see. And like to some extent, language, you're kind of dedicating your life to it. Like you, regardless of what people say, like you speaking English for like the past 20 something years of your life has given you like an understanding of the language that like not an expert non-native speaker will like never have, or like nobody will have, because like, I mean, you're speaking it your entire life. It's like one of the skills that like every native speaker is going to be extremely proficient in the language, right?
Yeah.
So like, how much can you really evaluate like voice acting in another language? I think there's some level you could. I agree, but like, I just feel like you're missing so much. Like,
I think when it comes to like voice acting, there's always like still going to be a human element to like there's tone. I think is probably one of the most important things when it comes to some like voice acting, because like I agree, the English language, if you don't speak English, has got to be the most jarring thing ever, because it's like one of the few languages that continuously like evolves and
well, I
makes
think other
new.
languages do.
Nothing I think works at the rate that English does, though. Where
I think the
like we
bigger
just
issue with English too is,
Well, it's just more
a
people
lot of
speaking it,
other
I guess.
languages. Yeah, and a lot of other
I'm
languages.
saying like any
there's,
language,
like,
if you don't speak it actively, and you, especially, I mean, nativity is like another like level. This is kind of getting into linguistics. I'm not trying to do that, but like, I just feel like here's how I'll rephrase my point. Do you think what are your experiences with like subs or like I guess voice acting that you thought was like actually bad? Like, what is a show you think has actual bad voice acting sub?
in Japanese.
Yes.
I think they're definitely, it's a lot of usually the smaller budget ones. Like most hentai, for example, probably have pretty like do not have the greatest of voice acting.
What do you think makes it bad?
And then
is my question.
There's not like a lot of emotion that goes into it.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can
So you think
definitely,
emotion is like the biggest thing.
you can definitely tell they're like, all right, I gotta go in there.
I gotta come, dude.
They're like, it's the hentai voice acting is like the equivalent of porn acting. Like you go in there, you're like, okay, I gotta film this 10-minute video, and three of those minutes are gonna be plot that no one cares about. Let me just get this done. And you can feel that in like shorter productions where it's like this season, there is an anime where there's a guy in every episode he is reincarnated as something different. And there are a bunch of I thought it was going to be an ASMR anime. ASMR technically is in there, but it's very Mickey Mouse. But there are a multitude of characters in there, and not to say that they do like a bad job, but you can tell it's like it's mediocre. It's like Squidward playing the clarinet. I can tell Squidward is probably better than me at playing the clarinet.
Crazy, bro.
But Squidward is still not the greatest clarinet player ever, type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think like Japanese voice acting is like infallible, but there's definitely, you can tell the I don't understand scenes from the the average conversation type of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess the way I would like test this is that I'd have to run like an experiment or something.
An experiment? Are you scientific? analysis
Yeah.
of
No. Because
voice.
here's my thing. It's like I think a lot of what makes people like the like subs, or like myself included, right? It's like the emotion, and like you mentioned that like when you think a sub is, or when you think voice acting is like bad, it feels like it lacks emotion. But I'm just wondering because like my critique of like dubs a lot of the time is like through like normal conversation just doesn't sound right. So like, do there exist shows where normal conversation in Japanese doesn't sound right, but we just can't tell?
I
Like
don't.
that's I guess
I
my
technically
question.
don't think it ever like anime is always going to be
Yeah,
one of those things where everything's like overdone a little bit.
sure. But
Obviously,
I mean like,
not
yeah,
every conversation in anime is going to sound normal per se, because they have to put a little bit of emphasis in there, a little bit of
uh-huh.
emotion to make the voices stand out, and to make those, you know, those more, what would just be, you're not going to watch someone just have a conversation, you'd be bored as fuck. And unless that conversation is like profoundly deep, they have to add a little bit in there.
Sure. What I mean is like in dubs, it's like you can instantly tell that the conversation just feels off. Like they just don't respond normally. So like I'm just, yeah,
I think part of
I
it
don't
is
know if that's,
because a lot of it is probably just
yeah.
audio spliced in instead of like a flowing conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, I guess you could say that doesn't happen in Japanese because they don't, they don't do that. They actually have people. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I would agree with that. That
Yeah, I do
kind
want
of
to.
counters my point there.
I want to add also on as well with like the English language and why it'd be difficult to like, why it's more difficult for other people to learn like English. Like we mentioned, got that dog in him. How many people in another language would hear the words "he got that dog in him" and be
Understand
able
what
to
we're
But that's
understand
just an
like,
idiom. Those exist in a lot of other languages, though.
I know,
Like,
but this is like English comes up with so many different ways to say stupid shit that I don't
part of
think.
the reason part of the reason for that is because English is one of the few languages that has so many different fucking useless words that all mean the same thing. And it's the one of the
it's the
biggest
nuance,
issues
dude.
that a
It's the
lot of
nuance between the
people
words. You gotta.
yeah, it's the biggest issue a lot of people have with actually learning English is not learning the basic vocabulary, but then having to learn also like the non-basic vocabulary that means the same thing as the basic vocabulary.
Yeah, but yeah, basically there's a lot of nuance to English in that way. There are a lot of different words, and you'll find people like, oh, you don't know that word, but then you'll say a word like, oh, you don't know that word. Like it's just a very vast language that is constantly creating new bullshit, and
Oh,
it's like you can hear. It's like if someone heard he got that dog in him, and they don't pay attention to like, you know, the internet world. They'll be like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, what do you mean he has
oh
a
yeah.
dog in him?
Bro, the dog shouldn't be in him.
Yeah, the
Okay.
dog should not be in him. The dogs are not meant to be inside of people. But yeah, obviously, like, we know what he got that dog in him means. Unfortunately, one of the earliest uses of that fucking meme was Zach Wilson, because he fucked someone's mom, and now here he is, like,
Oh,
he's where'd the dog go type of thing. Like,
oh my god.
yeah, the dog is not. He is someone you can look at and be like, he ain't got that dog in him.
Yeah,
He would probably be a terrible dub voice actor.
that's crazy.
Zach Wilson?
Zach
Yeah.
Wilson's.
Probably.
So you're gonna say he's a terrible quarterback and he's a terrible voice actor?
He
I
is
think
a
he's
terrible
more talented than I
quarterback.
ever will be a quarterback, but that doesn't mean he's any
Fair
good.
enough.
It's
Is this
relative, right?
Zach Wilson
He's a
roasting episode?
terrible, yeah, he is terrible quarterback relative to the NFL, clearly.
Yeah, like in college, he had like a good year or whatever, and he showed off at pro day like his physical capabilities, and that worked out and got him drafted very high. But then, unfortunately, he sucked ass, and then you get to see like, you'll see why some people just adapt better than others. Like Mike White, he has his
That's the
issues,
goat, dude.
but he steps in every fucking time. He has to step in for Zach Wilson. He does like pretty good. He'll show his stuff. He threw 4 TDs or whatever against the Bengals last year. Then he stepped in for a drive, did good. Then he got hurt, and he didn't do good in his third game, and he got benched again. But he's back out there now, and he's better than Zach Wilson, and so it works. He's got that dog in him. But moving on from sports, because this is an anime podcast.
I want to talk about Mike White.
You want to talk
Go
about the
Dude, that's the
Mike
GOAT,
White,
bro.
the greatest voice actor of all time?
That's the GOAT. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, dub versus sub. Where were we on before we got to the dog and
I was just rambling about like how people, if you don't understand the language, it's kind of hard to.
Are
to
there
evaluate.
yeah, we were talking about language. Talking more specifically, because this is a question on my mind, because I have some examples of this, but are there any shows that you think you would only watch the dub for? Like, if you ever went back to the show, you just would not want to watch the sub?
I mean, I didn't watch enough in dub,
Pokemon,
so it's
probably.
like, yeah, Pokemon would probably be something.
Pokemon is
Pokemon has like
weird,
a good enough dub that like I wouldn't mind watching
Yeah.
it.
So I have made that transition to Pokemon sub, but that one is fair. The
I
big
could
one
do
for
either.
me-
I feel like
Ash Ketchum is just better than like Satoshi or whatever. I'm sorry. Ash Ketchum is like the best name
No,
ever.
no. And the worst part is they'll like in the subtitles they will not say the name of the Pokemon move, but they'll like translate the word. So there's
Oh.
fucking like one of the slash moves or something they would translate as just like some random like word that is not a Pokemon world a Pokemon move at all, and you have to like figure out what it means.
yeah.
That was probably the worst part.
I watched XYZ and sub or whatever. That was like my first Pokemon sub experience probably. And it was always so jarring because there'll be times where the subs, they don't translate the Pokemon name. So instead of like Charizard, it's Lizardon. And
Yeah.
seeing that is like, you know in your head, that's not Lizardon to me. That is Charizard. But they're going to, for some reason, they don't translate it. They don't take the time to do that. And it's like, why type of thing. And that's probably why I look at dub probably for Pokemon, I guess. It's also like there's very seldom ever going to be a moment in Pokemon where I'm like, I need good voice acting here. Because what's going on in general is probably painful enough to distract me from any sort of voice acting. I don't think I could. I mean, I've said before, I don't think I ever go back and watch Pokemon in general, just because of how different it is from the games and my knowledge of those.
I feel about Yu-Gi-Oh. I can't go back and watch you. I've tried before.
I play Yu-Gi-Oh, but I couldn't watch it.
I can maybe watch Battle City, but even that.
Battle City's based, but yeah, even
Battle
that.
City is based. That's like the one that I'm like maybe I could give that another go one day. But the one for me actually not those types of things, but it's Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Not because the sub's bad. I'm so used to the dub.
Yeah, if
That
you get
it's,
used
like,
to it.
almost uncomfortable watching the sub because it's like, well, this isn't my Edward.
Yeah. I don't know if I could, because I watched, I'd say I have like a proper like 4 dubs of experience, and I don't think any of them are better than the sub except for Dragon Ball. So it'd have been like Dragon Ball, and then Fairy Tail. I'd say between I've watched copious amounts of, both sub and dub because of where I had to leave off. I think it was after the Island arc or whatever, where the dub just stopped and I had to go to sub. And so I'd say I have like a rather good amount of both. I would say the sub probably better.
I think the sub is better, but I'm so used to the dub because I watched the whole thing up to 2014 in dub, if I remember right.
And
So,
High School DxD had a fine dub for what I watched. I'd probably
switched to
watch
sub. I didn't like it that much.
I'd probably watch sub if I, for some reason, wanted to rewatch DxD, which I will never do.
That's crazy.
And then the final thing I watched dub, which is what I watched like right before DxD, was SAO season 1. I would definitely not go back to watch that in dub. I don't know if it was, I can't really say for sure if it was good or bad because I don't remember. It was a while ago, but I think the sub probably better. Like Kirito's voice actor is like a very, you recognize him when you hear him in a lot of different things, and so it's probably like a comfort thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it's just familiarity.
DxD dub just makes me laugh because it has that one line where he goes, "You can juggernaut these nuts."
Okay, well, let's bring this up. Localization.
Yeah.
I will say there are times where I don't mind it, but you can see it in sub too.
There's been a few things this season that have been getting kind of crazy with localization. What's the one? I think it was More Than a Married Couple that kept dropping like things like lit and stuff like that
It might
Yeah,
have
I
been.
hate that. I hate that stuff, man.
in the subs. Yeah.
Lit just
Oh.
sounds like that's just too.
Fucking Cuckoos did this a lot. They brought in a character who's like, you can tell they're like typical douchebag type of thing or whatever, or like modern teen, I guess, or like overly modern teen. But they would like change the subtitle translation for some of his words like all the time, even if it
Yeah.
was like the same word. Like they made him say bruh, lit, you know, the whole shebang basically. And no, I
Oh,
don't.
you said bruh? So they put you in the anime?
Yeah, they put me in the anime. Yeah, he said bruh. Except when I say bruh, it's like it's in character, as opposed to like a Japanese person doesn't know what the fuck bruh is.
Yeah.
I will say, on the topic of localization, there are two ways to look at it. Even if it fits the, you know, you can enjoy it or whatever, like everyone else. That's why there has to be two ways to look at it, because some people probably do like him saying bruh and find it hilarious. And then, like in Wonder Egg, Rika said no cap one time in the dub, and that fits her character, but it doesn't fit, you know, the setting or anything like that.
Yeah.
The way I look at it personally when it comes to localization is, if you look at it from, say, like a writing perspective, dialogue is not meant to be realistic per se, right? If you had realistic dialogue, you would have a lot of the filler words. I'm really bad about filler words like and that type
Yep,
of stuff.
yep.
If you had realistic dialogue, that would be in there a lot. And so you don't do that. You have dialogue that gets, words that are said should have a point. It is either to show character or to like progress something. And if it's like saying something like bruh in a Japanese setting, just doesn't add anything because it doesn't exist there. And I feel like it adds an unfair characterization to someone, maybe. Because it's like you have like an idea of what bruh is to you in terms of language or whatever. But it's also, it's not like so specific to a character, like a type of person, to say bruh, that like it should be used in that type of sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I just don't feel that it's necessary to have slang unless it's like, you know, like an American production or whatever. Like the Cyberpunk anime was made for dub. I didn't watch it in dub, but I haven't finished it yet either. But it, like, you can tell in the subs, they just put the fucking English, what's it called for it there? Like they had the "I'm built different" line in there. Obviously, it was like written to be English, and that type of stuff is fine. I feel like if you're gonna have, if it is made for a specific language, then you can have that language's quirks in there. But when it's like Japanese origin, it's just, it feels awkward to change the characterization so you can have your goofy localization moment in there.
Yeah.
I'm
I
kinda-
think
I'm
in
kinda
general it looks
neutral on
weird.
it.
So
It just,
it looks weird.
I don't know. It's
But I can see how it works for some characters. I would say like when we watch them and when we like read the subs, we're kind of like separating ourselves from like the real life, I guess, in some sense. So like it's like someone saying bruh or lit or whatever. It's like it's something we would be okay with like in real life, but like because we're watching anime, we just like view characters differently. So I don't know. It's like kind of weird. It's kind of hard to evaluate, but like yeah, I think in general it just sounds kind of weird.
I do
I know they
hate
do that long
when
manga. So
when Among Us was at its peak of popularity, and
Yeah,
they
it's
would
like-
always use the word sus. I'm like, this is not going to age. Among Us,
yeah,
somehow the memes are not dead, but one day they will die, and Among Us will be a game where it's like, people who go back and watch this are gonna be like, why the fuck did they say sus instead of suspicious or acting odd?
2070.
Yeah, 2070 they go back, it's like, what is sus? It's like, that's another reason you don't put slang into things, right? Is so that it ages better, because and I guess it depends on like the slang a little bit. Like you'll probably always, like, sus is like close enough to like you could probably work it out, but unless it's yeah, English just has so many different slang. It's always evolving, and some slangs live, some slangs die. Like, you could probably not have simp in your work of art of some kind, and it's not going to survive to like 2050 or whatever, because that word has been killed. It is gone. It has been ostracized from society.
I don't know yet, but eventually, yeah, for sure.
It's definitely not what it used to be, because people looked at it. They're like, simp. It's a great fucking word. And then it got overused by the younger population, because we can't have nice things and the kids always ruin it. And so it got overused, and everyone's like, all right, it's not cool anymore. We're done. And so it's like everyone knows the word, but you use it sparingly, because you know it's not like it's not like the hip word right now or whatever.
Yep.
It's like a meme life cycle. Like, one day maybe even he got that dog in him is gonna die, and no one's gonna know what it means in the future. Like, why are they showing pictures of this dog photoshopped over a lung, or like an X-ray or whatever?
Yeah,
it's just there's a lot of small things that go into writing a piece of dialogue, and I feel localization. I think in the end, as long as you don't take it demonically far, there are some things, like, you cannot alter a show in a drastic way, I feel, especially if you're going to just go ahead with localization. An example of that, I'm going to look up the exact things that happen with it, but I know the Maid Dragon dub was under a lot of scrutiny when it came out. So basically what happened with that is the Maid Dragon dub was obviously written by someone who had a lot of anger issues at the time against
heck?
Yeah, they are not exactly, let's see, why aren't problematic translations fixed? Let me see. I'm going to read through this real quick. Let's see. Fuck, I have to... This is like set up so awfully. What the fuck?
I didn't hear anything about that, but it would surprise me, I guess.
There is something on... Hold on, let me look at something more specific. There is like a line where they had nothing to do with like anything that was ever said. Oh, okay, hold on, I found it. You can let's see, quick spoiler. Let's see. Okay, so in the original subtitle or whatever, it's so she's wearing like a weird outfit or whatever, and it's like, oh, why are you wearing that? And basically, so like one of the characters has very large assets, and
the main maid, or no, the other one, the yellow hair, right?
Yeah, the one with like the gradient hair, like the green,
yellow, blue, yeah.
Yeah, it has hold on.
Large, yeah. I've
yeah, that one, the green hair, yeah, that. Yeah, so typically she has her cleavage like rather exposed.
Sure.
And so she's like, okay, everyone's always saying something to me, so I'm like, so she tried to tone down the exposure. And then, but in the dub, she's like, oh, why are you wearing that? And it's like, oh, the pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
The fucking... No, not the pesky patriarchal societal demands is like such a meta, like, political...
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work, yeah. But it's like,
just...
It's like taking liberties with it.
You're taking a lot of liberties to, like... And obviously, like, that type of stuff has a lot of, like, political, like, connotations behind it.
Sure, I guess, yeah. I think, one of the things I was thinking about was, like, the whole taking liberties with, like, subs and, like, how they use, like, modern slang. Like, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know this has happened before, where it's like, if the dub or even the sub would, like, if there's a person from, like, history, right? And they talk like differently, they'll like talk, the subs or like the dubs would be like, Shakespeare English, right? Like, thou must do this, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So like, that's like something that obviously that doesn't have the issue of like aging poorly like modern slang does. But that's like something where like it kind of works. Like if you use Shakespearean English, like everybody knows it's just like some turbo boomer like talking in like an ancient language or like an ancient version of the language. So that kind of like works. But that's like another example of how like they can like change how people talk. And like obviously the people in Japanese are not speaking Shakespearean English, but like we
Yeah.
recognize Shakespearean English as like this is just like some historical guy talking. So that's like a situation where it like kind of works. So
Yeah.
but yeah, in a lot of scenarios it just straight up doesn't. Um, Another thing is like also with subs is like again as like non-native Japanese speakers, it's hard to tell how I don't want to say how correct the subs are. I don't want to say that they're not correct, but like a lot can be lost in not a lot, but like some could be lost in like the number one, the translation, and number two, the movement from or the transition from like speech to text, right? Um,
Yeah, I think
so some of it's can be captured through the tone, which you can grasp even if you're not a speaker of that language, but like sometimes it just cannot be. So that's like something
there are
also.
some ways to evolve around that. Like, for example, this is like probably one of the better uses of localization, and it's when, like in anime where there'll be like characters that have like accents or whatever. Obviously, like we as non-Japanese speakers wouldn't be able to be like, oh, they're from
Right.
this, they're using this dialect or whatever.
I know what you're talking
But
about.
yeah,
Go
they'll
ahead.
put like I mean, it's the cliche of like they have like the country accent talking basically.
Yes,
Uh,
y'all, and all that
yeah,
stuff.
they'll
Yeah.
like they'll use the y'all and the goofy like idioms and stuff that are obviously not typically used in Japan or whatever,
Mhm.
and it lets you know that they're from a different area.
Yeah.
And while it's not technically right to say they have like a southern drawl or whatever, it is like the closest representation to
Yeah.
a different dialect that you're probably going to get, and so it
Yep.
works because you're not going to lose too much from the translation probably
Correct.
to like you watch Summertime Rendering or whatever, and they have
Yes,
like
yeah.
the accent on the island or whatever.
Yeah, right. Because they're from like that one region.
Yeah, they're
Or
from that
one of the
island,
regions.
has like 300 people on it or whatever. It's going to have its own like special way of talking probably
Right. Yep.
because everyone's developing on that island together or whatever.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I feel like that's been done in other anime. I think there's like
Yeah, there's all sorts of anime that have.
like in Devil is a part timer. There's like one character from like a region. I don't know what region it is in Japan. It's like a very famous like accent. And they have like code switching where like they turn it off when they're in like with people who don't have that accent, but then they talk in that accent when I mean that happens in like
Yeah, that
every
happens.
language where like
Yeah.
yeah, they swap back and forth, right?
Yeah.
But that's like one example where they like the subs would be like y'all or like you drop the G and like ing when you add it onto something or like that's like a southern kind of quirk there
Yeah.
that we have in English that it's different. It manifests itself differently in other accents, but that's like that works for us. So yeah, that's another good example. So I think subs kind of there's ways to get around it, but like I still think like some of it's just always going to be lost, which is fine. Doesn't may
Yeah.
not take away from your
There are
enjoyment of the
sometimes
show,
where like
so.
you'll see like translator notes. You don't see them often anymore. It has to be probably something very specific that they can't work their way around in the translation.
Like translator note, Keikaku means plan, like that one.
Yeah, something like shit like that. Yeah, which is probably not as needed. But like in Clanad, for example, there is a time where they reference like a Japanese, they something like specific like Japan, like I don't know if it was folklore or like a specific like person. I can't remember exactly.
Right.
But there's like a translator note there to be like, okay, this is what this means. Here's the context. You may not get it, but that's what they said here. You can't fuck with it to like make it make any sense. So
Right.
sometimes they'll say stuff and it's like, what the fuck is that? And they don't give the translator's note. But yeah, there are obviously some things that get lost in because even like character names, especially in like are all puns or whatever. And
Right.
I couldn't tell you what all of them are. But like sometimes like Do It Yourself is an anime airing right now. And the most shameless name pun I've ever seen is something that even I can understand. And they explicitly mention many, many times in the anime, and to a very annoying point, but the main character's name in Do It Yourself is Yua Serufu. So it's like, yourself. It's goofy.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, it's dumb and
That's
goofy.
that's different.
Yeah, it's something that's probably hilarious to people in Japan or whatever, but annoying
Yeah,
as
but
shit
for
when
us,
you're
it's like
watching it.
corny.
It's like, oh my god. And I'm sure that there are names that we see where we're like, oh, that's just a name, right? But it's actually like a really shitty pun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds familiar. I feel like I've seen that a few times. And also, like, yeah, just the meaning of names. That's like something that's like hard to translate in a lot of cases, even if they're like normal names. It might like someone who's Japanese might like know more about that name, and it might work for the context of like who that character is and what they do.
Yeah, I feel like in English, like most of the time, you're not gonna know what someone's name means. Like, my name has meaning, but it's like has Hebrew origin or whatever, and so no one's gonna know what
names.
No one's gonna know what the fuck Daniel means typically. But in Japan or whatever, like they have their words have meaning or whatever, and so maybe someone's name means like spring tree or something like that, and they'll know that versus like. You're not going to know what fucking Joe's name meaning is. I mean, yeah, but like, you're not going to look at a guy named like fucking Justin and be like, wonder what your name means. But like
just in case, bro.
Yeah, but in like Japan or whatever, they'll hear something and be like, oh, that's what this means or whatever.
I think I heard in Japan, or at least like. They use certain characters, but then the characters don't actually match up with the meaning. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but like that's what I've heard. It's like the way the name is pronounced is like different from what the actual character represents. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like there's multiple layers to it. So it's not like you can just look at the characters and know, or like it's not like you can look at the name itself and know what it means. But like they all have like characters and those have meanings. So yeah, that's like it's complicated. TLDR.
Yeah, I have to look up the exact specific thing. But in Tonikaku Kawaii, for example, so the main character's name is Nasa, right?
Yes.
But
well, that's a stupid one.
Okay, no, that's not exactly like what I'm getting. I need to fill in the context. I can just read the description here. So it follows protagonist whose name is written with the characters for Hoshizora, which is Starry Sky.
Yeah,
they pronounce it as NASA.
Right.
So Starry Sky is Hoshizora is, that's how they write it, but his name is pronounced differently. Shitty pun, the whole shebang. But yeah, that's kind of like what you were talking about, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just hard to get all of that as a, non-native speaker. That's all.
Yeah. It has to be like beaten over my fucking head for me to understand most. Like you a Serafu or Nasa. Like obviously I can understand those shitty puns, but most of them are probably gonna fly like right over the head. Like I could not name another pun about like anything, basically.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter like all the time, but there are things like in ReZero, there's a lot of characters that have like star names, and there's like most of the people have names of like stars or whatever. Like Subaru is like a cluster of stars or whatever.
Right.
And there's like meaning behind that, and a lot of that you're not going to know as like an English speaker, for example. Like if someone
you know the English name of the star or whatever. Right?
Yeah, you'll know. You're not going to know what the fuck Subaru is. Like not everyone just knows.
Car.
Like, yeah, you'll think of like the car, or like it's just some Japanese name, but it's a cluster of stars. And that's what he's named after. And there's like other characters who have star names and stuff as well, but you're just not going to recognize those. And so maybe it's not as significant to you, or the author and Japanese people might view it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which has nothing to do with dub, I guess.
No,
dub definitely cannot pick those things up.
Right. They don't even. I mean, like, I guess like, how much do the names change? I think like the most iconic, or like the one that I talked about, was like Ash Ketchum versus like Satoshi or whatever. But like nowadays in like a lot of dubs, it's just like, I guess they're not like necessarily marketed in the same way Pokemon was, so they didn't feel the need to like.
They don't need to change anything, yeah.
And like there's also the games which translate it. You know what? Or not translate. They give new names to like gym leaders and stuff. So like they already have a basis for that. So it's just different.
Yeah. Like giraffe rig in fucking English or whatever is probably because we have goofy where it's giraffe rig forward backwards. I'm sure it's completely different in Japanese where it probably just has
I'm sure.
some. I mean, I don't know what the fuck the Japanese name for giraffe rig
No,
is.
but I think it works. It works. Like the Pokemon names in general, I think
it's
they do
fine.
a great job of like translating.
Because like if it was just the straight up translations or whatever, it'd be awkward. Because like I think Volcarona is like ugly moth or something like that.
Yeah. So some of them in Japanese are like weird. Like Magnemite is like coil or something like that. It's like not even like a. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Giraffe rig in Japanese is Kirin-riki.
Oh, that is backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirin is just like a unicorn, right? And I think that's what it is.
I don't know. Here, I mean, here's the fucking goofy, whatever. Yeah.
The translation. Oh no! But yeah, like the
Yeah, it's got like
Kirin means giraffe.
Yeah.
And Nenriki means telekinesis. Oh, that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little goofy. It doesn't work exactly like giraffe rig, obviously, because it's like they can't like turn their fucking symbols backwards.
Yeah, you can't.
Where you can put a rig and giraffe and it looks normal. So it's not like the same kind of wordplay, I guess, as like English, but obviously in the symbols it looks the same.
Yep.
Yeah, a little goofy.
I like the Pokemon names in English, but maybe I'm just biased because I grew up with them. But I think they're punny, and I think most of them are done very well.
Good old
the thing about
Flamigo.
Flamigo. Okay, the thing I find really interesting is how they incorporate like new slang. It's like buzzwole, like swole is like a term that did not exist like 15 years ago or whatever, right? But like now it works, you know, because like everybody, or like I should say everybody knows, but like it's kind of like been incorporated into like at least the internet language, like what swole means, right? You're just like you're buff, but like that's cool. I think there's another example in current. Oh, Lechonk. Like chonk is like it's like a meme word, right?
Yeah.
But like it doesn't mean anything. Like it didn't mean anything like 10 years ago, right? So that's
in like another 10 years, maybe people aren't gonna know what chonk means.
No, they may not know what it means, but also
it's not gonna matter. They probably won't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. I think that's a very cool aspect of Pokemon that I obviously don't know if it happens in Japanese, but like at least in English, I really like that they
Well, how often I don't know how often like they add stuff to their language, because a lot of the time it's like if they need to, I feel like if it's within their origin, it's one thing, but whenever like a new English word gets added or whatever, and like it actually means something to them and it has some level of importance, they just use like katakana or whatever to sound it out.
There's like slang and stuff. I mean, like in every language.
There's nuances to Japanese that I'm never gonna understand, never will. Like I don't know how their slang, like how often it crops up in comparison to like. Do they have their own version of "he got that dog in him"? Like I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, there's just idioms like.
Yeah, but I mean, they're never gonna like has something. I wonder. It's possible like stuff like that has happened before, and it's just in another language, and so. Maybe like, that picture is like, Japanese origin.
What happens is just like something happens or like when I say something happens, I mean like people would just start relating two ideas together and then that'll just become like an idiom, right?
Yeah.
So like, he got that dog in him. It's just like it's like a visual thing of like there's a dog and it's like barking and it does a lot of other stuff or whatever in him. And then it became like a meme, but like the two concepts kind of merged into an idiom. It's like what's a good example? Like break a leg, right?
Yeah.
Break a leg doesn't mean anything, but like several hundred years or whenever this was created, it's like you're gonna do so well that you're gonna end up breaking a leg, right? And then maybe that eventually got condensed, and that stuff happens in like every language. So it exists. Whether it develops at the same pace as English, I don't know. There are more English speakers and there are more subgroups, but I'm sure that exists. And I have not studied the names of Pokemon in Japanese enough to tell you how much how widespread that is nowadays. But I do appreciate how they worked it into English Pokemon names. That's all.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll probably never know. But what we do know is that this episode is at its end, because we probably can't go on for too much longer. But yeah, that has been episode 30 of the Gochuucast. But something that you can know is that next week, Saturday, 3 p.m. EST, is when the next episode will be dropping, of course, which you can check out on our YouTube channel, is the Order and Anime Podcast. It's like at Gochuucast is our handle or whatever. They're making handles now on YouTube or whatever. But you can also check us out you can go to our Anchor page and you can get links to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. if you want to hear the audio-only version of things, if you're on the go. But thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate us 5 stars, whatever the good old rating booster, the algorithm helping thing is out on whatever platform you are using. And we will see you next week. Thank you and goodbye.